All right. Good evening or morning or afternoon or whenever you're watching this. Welcome to week 6 of EDT 315. This is really the last instructional week. Next week, week 7, will be our final class meeting. And then you'll have a week beyond that until the 19th to get all coursework in. Maybe I should start there just in terms of starting to wrap the course up. Do make sure that you are getting everything turned in. If you look back through the preceding 5 weeks of the class, I think we have 4 or 5 discussion forums that you should have participated in. You should have the video project from last week. You should have the interactive web apps from the week before, the interactive presentations from prior to that. And the main project is all revolving around these 2 lesson plans and your 2 lesson plan documents that you will be turning in as part of your final work as well. So just keep an eye on that. There are many of you who have not turned much in at this point. So I just want to make sure that people aren't putting it all off until the last second. The 19th is a hard stop deadline. I have to have my grades in by, I think, 2 days after that. So I need to have all material into me by the 19th so that I have time to go through it all and get it turned in. Certainly, I would appreciate if things get turned in sooner than that, and I am going to be going through what has been submitted so far and getting those graded and feedback returned on that work. But just keep an eye on the clock. We've got basically 2 weeks from tonight to have all coursework turned in. Next week, I would like to ask everybody to attend next week's class meeting if at all possible. We're just going to do some quick wrap up course evaluations, have everybody just talk very briefly about their lesson plan projects and what they focused on, and just kind of wrap everything up for the course and make sure that everybody has had a chance to ask any remaining questions that they have as we head into the final stretch. All right, so that's next week and the week after. In terms of this week, our final topic is to take a little bit of a look at assessment. At this point, the lesson plan documents, the template documents that you got from the beginning of the course, should pretty much be full with the exception of the assessment piece. So that's what we're going to look at this week. Take a look a little bit at assessment in general, but then also obviously how technology can impact or influence the way assessment is done and some of the challenges there. So there's going to be a range of some things to do this week. It's all up in Blackboard, but let me just kind of step through it. By the way, if you have not gotten me the URL for your Wix, please do so as soon as possible. I should have had those in the second or third week of the course, and there are many, many of you that I have not yet seen your Wix URL. So please get those sent to me. So in terms of the work for this week, you're going to be starting off with a chapter about designing assessments. At this point in your careers, both as students and as educators or educators in training, hopefully you have had a pretty good introduction to assessment in general. So this is kind of just a refresher maybe about some learning practices or some assessment practices and what qualifies as good assessment. So begin by reading through the chapter. Then follow that up. I have a page here in Blackboard where I kind of summarize my thoughts and the main points out of the chapter. So this is meant to be a follow-up and just sort of a summary of the big ideas. And in particular, these 3 items of valid, reliable, and practical in terms of evaluating whether an assessment is going to be effective or not. So sort of pay particular attention to that. And then in terms of If I had one major idea that I would like everyone to get out of the assessment conversation, it's that please, if it's part of your thinking that assessment just means tests, try to adjust that thinking. Assessments are basically anywhere that you gather data about student performance. So they can be just informal classroom observations, they can be projects, they can be essays, they can be performances, they can be, any range of activities. If they are designed in a way that they give you information about where a student's learning is, then that is an assessment. And particularly when it comes to incorporating technology into assessments, you really have to get away from thinking that assessments are just question and answer kinds of testing situations. Those have their place, but there are far more meaningful and effective ways in many cases to do assessments with students. So just give some thought to that in terms of what an assessment actually is and what it can look like. There's a wide range for creativity when it comes to designing assessments. And they don't have to look the same for every student, and they certainly are not going to look the same for every topic in your class. So just give that some thought. So that's kind of phase one for the work for the week, is to take a look at the chapter and the follow up on the chapter. I have another resource here just to kind of look through. It's rather lengthy, so you don't have to read the entire thing, but basically it's a summary of a number of research papers that are related to assessment and assessment practices, and in particular, formative assessment, which I find in some ways is sort of the more useful type of assessment in a learning situation. That's the assessment that happens while the students are learning, as they're building their knowledge. So this is meant more to kind of overview and recap some big ideas and some of what the research says. If you look through this and you see a particular study that looks interesting to you, you can certainly look up. A number of them are available online, or you might be able to find more information about them. So this is sort of an optional resource for this week, just to follow up on some of the ideas of assessment, but in particular to reinforce the fact that this is all based in research. Our knowledge of what assessment does and when it's the most useful is grounded in solid research from many, many, many different sources. So then the next piece is to bring technology into the equation. And the trick with technology is that while it can allow a number of ways to deliver an assessment and certainly to evaluate assessments, it also opens up a whole host of situations basically that boil down to cheating. To just put it bluntly, that the minute you have students that are taking tests and going back to that sort of mode, if they're taking tests online from home, you have very little confidence that the answers that you're receiving are actually valid reflections of what the student knows. So, what I'd like to do to begin this conversation is, this will be our final forum for the course, is for each of you to do a little looking around online and to look specifically for resources or information that relates to technology-based assessment, strengths, weaknesses, strategies. How can you incorporate technology into assessments and still know that the results you're getting are valid? So the task is for each of you to locate some resource like this, to do a posting here in the forum, and as part of that posting also include a link to whatever that resource is. If it's a website, just include the URL for the website. So this is going to be a single thread forum. So all of your replies are going to be posted as replies to the thread that I've already started. Um, and I've got the directions here for specifically what you're going to be asked to post. And then I've also given a sample posting here so you can kind of see what I'm looking for. And this is an actual resource. There's a learning platform, a learning management system called Moodle. And as part of their resources, they have a page that kind of talks about how to some testing, some assessment strategies that you can use for Moodle, but they also apply to other situations. So I have a link to that resource or that article right here. So again, each of you would just create a reply to this thread that includes information about some resource that you located that relates to technology-based assessment and best practices and strategies and so on. So that is kind of assignment number 2. So number 1 is reading, number 2 is participating in this final forum of the course, and then the actual assignment is designed to link into your lesson plan projects. But what I'm going to be asking you to do is to take an existing assessment. So each of you has created has created 2 lesson plans, each of which is going to need some kind of an assessment as a piece of it. Or maybe they're both lesson plans from a larger unit, and at the end of that unit, there will be some kind of a summative assessment. So what I'd like you to do is to write up a document in 3 parts. The first part is simply reflecting on the assessment as it exists currently or as it would exist. This would be for in-person, no technology involved, sort of traditional assessment practices, keeping in mind some of the information from the chapter from this week of what makes a good assessment and how can we make assessments as effective as possible. So that will be the first part of this document, is just describing the assessment as it exists. Then in the next section, you're going to redesign that same assessment, but to incorporate technology somehow, but in-person technology. So maybe the initial assessment is a traditional pen and question and answer, pen and paper test that is given in class on paper. So for part 2, it might be a similar assessment or the same assessment, but now it's being delivered through a learning management system of some kind. Through a Google quiz or a Microsoft form quiz or something along those lines. But basically, how would the assessment change in order to incorporate technology into it in an in-person classroom setting? And then the final would be to take that same assessment goal and to redesign it using technology that would be basically a distance learning model. You are not going to be there with the student when they take the assessment. So what are you going to need to do to redesign that assessment activity so that you know that the results you're getting are valid, and so that students can complete it and get the information to you even though they will not be with you in person? So bottom line is, you have a goal that you're trying to assess. You have information you're trying to learn about what a student has learned. You're going to describe what that assessment would look like without technology in person. You're going to describe what it would look like with technology, but still in person. And then you're going to describe that assessment with technology, but distance learning model where you are not with them. So this will be written up as a Word document, exported as a PDF, please. And I've got a naming convention here. And then once you have the document completed, you will then submit it to the upload link, which is the final piece of the a final piece of the week's work. Here is the upload link for the assignment. So these are the final two kind of assignments, along with just wrapping up your lesson plans, both on paper and also on your Wix websites. The video projects from last week are technically still ongoing through next week, so that you have the 2 weeks to complete those. But again, you have 2 weeks from tonight, then Monday the 19th, is when all work must be completed and turned into me for the course, so that I have time to go through and evaluate it all and get my grades turned into Central by, I think my deadline is the 21st of that week. So that's why we've got a deadline of the 19th. All right. So that is our final overview. Again, plan on being in WebEx next Monday night at 7:20 for everybody. If for some reason you absolutely cannot make it, please reach out and let me know ahead of time, so that I know who to expect will not be there. And like I said, we'll do quick presentations about your lesson plans. We'll do course evaluations. We'll do a couple of other things just to wrap up the course as a whole. And that will be that. All right. So please reach out with any questions you may have as we head into the final couple weeks here. Good luck, and I will see everybody in a week.